glad to have you here. It's a weary night to be out, so proud of the fact we're all here. First thing we'll have is invocation and pledge, and Dr. Dawson, please submit.
May we pray? Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you first of all for the many blessings that you have given to us. We thank you for the opportunities that you have provided for us to know more about you and more about your world. And Lord, we thank you for the opportunity that we have to work for the benefit of your children. Please guide us as we begin this new calendar year. Please guide and direct our thoughts and our labors together so that all things would be focused on the children of our county and on the work that you would have us to do. These things we ask in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first thing is approval of the agenda we have in front of us. I think everybody knows about some slight change in how we normally do things. Motion by Dr. Dawson, second by, did you say second? I did, okay. I would be put the hand on that. Okay. We've got a motion second to the agenda be approved as printed. All in favor signify by raising your hand, and that is unanimous. Next thing, the approval of the minutes for December 10th.
And you've got a copy of the minutes underneath, because we can't pull up attachments tonight. And so there's a copy of the minutes from the December 10th board meeting that should be under your agenda to look over. It was posted on the actual assembly, so if you have a chance to look at that before you.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Ms. Bilderback,
Second.
seconded by Dr. Dawson, to approve the minutes as presented. All in favor signify by raising your hand, and that's also unanimous. Next, we have our consent items, and we normally have those on the screen, but due to our ongoing technical problems, we have them in hand. Can't share them with everybody. It's a page full.
Page and just a few.
And we have, in these, we have a combination of fundraiser requests and field trip requests.
The one field trip that we'll be approving is from the track team. In this spring, they're going to go overnight to Birmingham, Alabama to run in a track meet. So that will be in March.
Indoor track. All right, and we have our list of fundraisers.
Sequentially, that's on 131. I'm sorry. I said March. It's January.
Okay, you're right. I was looking at it today. Yeah. All right. Motion, we approve the consent items by Mr. Evans, second by Dr. Dawson. Any discussion or questions? There being none, all in favor signify by raising your hand, and that is also unanimous. Next, we have attaining high student achievement and success, and I believe that's.
All right, I'm going to ask Ms. Rooks is going to speak with us, but I'll have Ms. Elder come up and kind of set the stage, just so typically we try to make sure we go through those focus areas that the board has and what we have as a school district. And we just want to make sure that we continue to provide information. Ms. Rooks is here tonight to provide information on special needs and 504 qualifications and how that takes place for our parents and for our students, so that you know a little bit more about that process and how we do that in the school system. Jenny, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Alrighty, so we'll start with identification. And you can see there's the model, the visual model that I showed you before with the multi-tiered system of supports, where we have the whole child at the center of everything we do. So we make individual decisions on each child as they present themselves. We make sure that we are screening to look for any concerns or needs for remediation or needs for acceleration, and everything we do in Monroe County's database. On the student support teams, when a student does have some gaps in learning, or they might not be achieving the standard like we would like them to, then we can open up a tiered system of supports. So we have a lot of tiers right now. The state has revised those as we talked about last time, and that's going to be a process for our staff in changing all our forms. But the student support team is the most intensive team that we have. And their job is really to make sure that interventions are being provided for the amount of time that they need to be provided, and that they rule out that there's something that could potentially work without having to have them evaluated for special education. So we want to make sure that they really feel like they've exhausted all possibilities first. And what you'll see on the next page is the multi-tiered prevention system. We talked a little bit about this last time, and I just wanted to update our numbers for you. As of our last FTE count, we had 14.8% at the third level. And again, as we talked, that could just be in one area. So a student might just struggle in math, but they count towards that third tier. But they may be accelerating in other areas. So it doesn't mean that in all areas that there's a deficit. And then at the second tier, we have about 10% of our students who qualify for student support teams, and that receive some kind of assistance in academics. Special education is a process where we conduct a comprehensive evaluation. And what that means is we're going to ask you lots of questions about your child and find out all of their needs, all of your concerns as a parent, and then we're going to go ahead and pull in the correct specialists to be able to evaluate your child and give you feedback and recommendations. You can see some of the eligibility areas out to the side. There are 13 that the state recognizes. And those eligibility areas, we like for them to describe the child, but they do not define what kind of interventions that child has. So it does not mean that you're going to a certain program or that you're going to be plugged into a certain intervention. It does not define that for you. And a lot of parents think of special ed as a room that used to be down the hall and separate from people, and it's no longer that case. Those kids are in co-teach settings, and they receive the support that they need in their classrooms. And so kind of talking to them about what our model looks like now can be very different, because sometimes they think if they are labeled with one of these things, they're going to be removed from their peers, and that's not always the case. You can have more than one exceptionality. So you may have be diagnosed with deaf, hard of hearing and also have some speech concerns. So you would have 2 exceptionalities that you're served for, but you're served for whatever your deficit area is. For reevaluations, this is our evaluation that determines if we can fade supports or if you continue to meet the need for those supports. We try to give specially designed instruction to those students who qualify so that over time we can start to fade the supports that they need, and then they can come out of special education, and that happens for some, but it does not happen for all. But we do like to see the growth that they've made on the assessments, so we try to use the same ones and use comparative measures so the parents can see how much they've grown.
Can you speak to, when we talk about, I think as part of the scope of understanding that, like if a child comes in from another school district, then
Sure,
they
absolutely.
have, how is that treated? Like, so I'm in a Bibb County, and I have, how is that handled when they come in
Sure.
our county?
Sure. So sometimes students are transferred in with an exceptionality area. If they're in the state of Georgia, we're all under the same state laws for eligibility, but those are not the same across the United States. So every state has their own differences. So we have to review the eligibility and see if they meet criteria here. And then we have them go back through this reevaluation process to determine if they still require services in the state of Georgia. So if they're out of state, that happens. If they're in state, most of the records will transfer. We have had some minor issues with some of that, just due diligence where we wanted to do more to serve the students than maybe what the previous county did.
Because we want to make sure that they receive services as quickly.
That's correct.
As seamless as it can be.
That's
to
correct,
give them
yes.
the services they
And a lot of parents ask me if I come with an IEP and it calls for OT services, will you honor that? Absolutely, we honor all IEPs that come through the door. whatever the services are, we start to provide them, and then we have what's called a 20-day meeting. And at that meeting, we talk about how does this fit with our county supports, because every county is different in what they have.
You said OT.
Oh, sorry, that's great. Occupational therapy, I am so sorry.
And you have PT.
Absolutely, yes.
And we know what PT is.
I think I could use a whole sentence with acronyms, so yes, thank you for calling me out on that.
You're not alone.
No, I'm a world word. Educators, I think we have more acronyms than probably any other profession.
Yes. Child find is the next slide. We have a due diligence under federal law to provide evaluations and supports to students starting at the age of 2.5. So at 2.5, a parent may come to me and say, we just received a diagnosis from Navison of autism. What can you do for us? And we would start our process, because our process can take up like 90 to 120 days. So we have to provide services if they do qualify by the age of 3. And a lot of people don't know that. So sometimes we'll have people from churches call and say, I have a friend in Sunday school and her child's really struggling with speech. Can you help them? And I say, yes, please give them my number. And they'll call me and we can talk about what we can do. But that's really important, is that parents know that they can come to us even if they're receiving services from Babies Can't Wait earlier than the age of 4.
And one, it helps them, we're helping a parent and the child earlier, but it also helps the transition when they come into pre-K. It makes a huge difference, so that they've had some training as to what school will be like and how that process can help that family is important.
That's right, and you think about the gap at 3 versus the gap at 12, like it's so small, and we're able to really remediate that. Okay, so then that is the end of special education. Do you have any questions about special ed? I'm going to move into 504.
Before you do that, I want the board to understand, like, typically, if a child has a special needs and they're being served, we're going to give them those services. But typically, when it doesn't, like testing a child, a lot of times we say, when do we test a child? We try to get a lot of data as it relates to whether it's academic, behavioral, emotional
Yes.
type data before we test, because there may be a lot of things going on in a child's life that may cause temporarily for them to have an issue in some place. And so that's why we get that data. If we can solve it through a student support team first, before having to provide special needs services, we can try to do that. And then we have different, that's what those tiers do. And so those that end up getting tested for a special need actually have been helped in some areas academically, it may be behaviorally, emotionally, before we even get to that point. And that's what we try to teach our teachers and try to teach our parents, so that if not, if a kid, typically if he misbehaved today, why did you test him? Well, we've got to get data over time that says the kid is having behavioral issues or academic issues. And so that's, I want everybody to understand there's a lot of data, and there's a lot of work that goes on before a child is actually tested sometimes.
Yes, and it can be a process. We have a lot of parents call and ask, and their child may be in tier 1 or tier 2, and we ask for some grace to be able to do some of those interventions in tier 3 before we test, so that we can have really solid information. So sometimes there is a delay. But parents are usually very flexible with that, knowing that we're going to be meeting every 4 to 8 weeks. So 504 is derived from a physical limitation or disability. It's usually a diagnosis from a doctor or an agency that you have received, and you come to school, and on your enrollment paperwork at the school, it'll ask you, does your child have any medical diagnoses? And if you put yes to asthma or yes to ADHD or anything like that, we will go ahead and we'll schedule a 504 meeting. In that meeting, we are going to talk about how that medical condition, the quote is actually substantially limits one or more major life activities. So it's not just that I have this diagnosis and I receive a 504, but I have this and I'm not able to do something at the school because of that diagnosis. I need a ramp, or I need an EpiPen, or I need some kind of diabetes treatment or something like that, that I may need some medical care or some additional academic supports in order to function in the school environment. And we determine that on the next page through an eligibility. And we walk through attendance data, because a medical condition that can be severe can cause attendance issues, and we need to talk about those. We'll look at grades, we'll look at credits. All of those things are considered when we're talking about eligibility. We are not allowed to consider a child who is on medication that controls those symptoms, so we have to consider the child that is unmedicated. So if you move here from Butts County and you have ADHD, and when you were in Butts County, you were off the chain and you were put on Vyvanse and you came here and you're the perfect student, we still have to consider that child that was having behavioral difficulties and not turning in their work and things at the other county. So we put in supports if you're qualified, if you're eligible, and we'll develop a plan. And then there's some students who are eligible, but they're currently being treated by a physician, and so they have no symptomology, and they don't need any medication at school, and so they're eligible, but they don't have a plan because there's really nothing to write at the time. But it may be something that can come back that might be reoccurring, like RA sometimes can be really great as it moves on. Is that my signal that it's time? She said she would do something to make sure I knew it was time. So there's things that can ebb and flow that, you know, you'd be eligible, and if that was reoccurring, we would go ahead and develop a plan. And then there's students who are not eligible, even though they have a medical condition. They are doing great in school, and they're able to care for their medical needs on their own, and really don't need our services.
How about with both sides, with special needs and for 504, how often do we look at eligibility? How often do we meet to look at the plan, a 504 plan or an IEP? How does that look for a parent of a child that has that, and how does that affect staff? How often do we do those things?
Okay, so for a 504, you should meet on your plan yearly. We don't like to meet too close to the beginning of the year because you're different in every environment that you go into. So you may have a new teacher and it may just be the perfect marriage and you're doing great in class. So we like to meet about 4 weeks into the school year, so we give you time to get acclimated and know what it is that you need. So we'll meet for the plan every year. The eligibility will be every 3 years that we'll consider that. And we can obviously meet more if we need to, or if the parent calls a meeting, we can do that anytime. And that's the same with an IEP. We meet yearly for the plan. Every 3 years, we'll look at their eligibility area and decide if we need more testing or not. But the parent can always request that at any time.
Can anybody request it? Like if the teacher needs to request it?
We've had teachers ask for some assistance, and we've been able to kind of send them to the specialist that they needed to go to.
Can the parent deny it too?
Can the parent deny testing? They can. They can. And then the district has the right to go down the process of due process and write a prior written notice why they feel like that data is necessary. And then we would send that to the parent, and then the parent could reply. Or if we didn't feel like it was necessary at the time, that they still needed services, we could continue.
And you can deny special needs services, right? We have that happen from time to time with older children that have been served for a time. If you want to talk a little bit about that.
That's right. That's called revocation. If you're going to revoke, you are revoking all services. So when you have an IEP and you come and see me and say, I want to revoke my services, you lose the rights to all of the programs that we have. Even if they're in a tiered program, you would come out of any kind of RTI that you had. You would lose all protections for behavior. So when a student has behaviors at 10 days, if they have suspension for more than 10 days, we meet as a team and we put a plan in place for that student, and we really work with them, and we have different environments to help them be successful. But when you revoke, you lose access to all of those things. I like to explain that to parents before they sign that little piece of paper. Because sometimes it's a student coming home saying, I wish I didn't have this service. And that's something we can sit down and we can modify the plan. We don't need to maybe revoke all the services just for one.
That's right, a lot of times the older children, they're trying to remove it, there's a stigma associated with it, so they don't want to be in a certain group or label, but a lot of times they need the support, so we're trying to work either with a plan or without a plan to try to make that work for them, because that's, a lot of times if they've had that support in elementary, and then in middle, then you don't give it in high school, there's a gap. A lot of times, we're spending a lot of time trying to get that gap, because they're in the last part of the race. So you wanna make sure that they have that extra help. And a lot of times that
Yeah.
hurts us when we're not able to provide that. And, you know, we try to do everything we can to make sure they're in certain classes, maybe in co-teach environments when we
Yes.
can, if we can stay that way. We do have that happen a lot in high school.
Has that cost-benefit disfigurement always been in there? Because I don't recall that clause, and I'm glad it's in there. Because I know some instances way back where something was needed and we were not able to provide it. So,
Yes.
has that always been in there?
On the 504 page,
504.
pull that up. It has been in there for a while now.
I don't think it used to be though.
I don't think it did either.
Because I know there have been instances where we had people burned or something,
Yes.
the children really needed some coping skills.
Yes.
With it, they weren't really able to provide the kinds of things.
And some counseling and
Right.
things like
And
that.
that's way bad. I'm glad to see that's in there.
Yes, and we have a counselor now, so if we were to have that situation, we could refer to the Apex counselor, and we have lots of supports that can wrap around those.
And the widest range probably of things that can qualify is probably under 504, because it could be a short-term issue with like a broken leg that you're trying to help get out of school, or it could be something that's long-term, that a doctor has diagnosed. So it probably has the most ways to qualify, probably. would
It
you say?
does, it is limited in its service abilities, so sometimes when somebody qualifies for 504 but requires extensive nursing support, occupational therapy, things like that, we will try to go through the evaluation process to see if they qualify for services. We do receive funding for IEPs and those services. We do not receive funding for 504 services. So those are,
Locally funded.
so you wouldn't want everybody to be receiving physical therapy or something like that. You'd want to really work with the clinics to make sure that you have recommendations from them.
And one of the things that, and appreciate you going through this, but one of the things that I wanted you to realize is she gave those percentages. If I remember, there were 10 and 14, so what, like a quarter of our children are being served in some type of health capacity. And with that, there's a lot of resources that we have to have, a lot of teachers we have to have, a lot of planning, scheduling. But we do feel that it's making a big difference for our kids, so that they're being able to be challenged where they are to get better. And obviously, from the things that we're seeing, the performance pieces, we're doing that across the board. So we're doing a better job. It's not perfect, because a lot of times these are hard to deal with situations. But I think we're doing a better job at challenging our children and having them be able to be at the highest rigor that they can be at in whatever setting or whatever they may be, is where the special needs 504, SST, or the general population. And I think that's one of the things I see different from the 1990s and 2000s to what we do now, is the individualized care as it relates to these different situations for kids. So, you know, it's hard, and we don't, like I said, we're not perfect, but I think we're trying to do a better job of providing the services than ever before.
And if you know of a parent who has questions, I mean, they can always call me and contact me, and I can walk them through the different processes that we have.
Have any questions, Ms. Rowe?
Thank you for your time.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy.
We're just looking at the time, it's usually try to have this around 6 o'clock. Looks like everybody, doesn't seem to be anybody coming on in right now, but we're going to move now to our student recognition. And first off will be KP Sutton.
Mr. Mayor, we'll call you up. We'll come after you.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here tonight for our staff recognition. And of course, we're going to recognize some of our 4th and 5th grade students. The first 3 staff members we would like to recognize are our cafeteria full-time staff members. They are Portia Lyons, Vera Moore, and Barbara Lyons. If they would come down. I think Barbara is here. Vera is unable to make it, and Ms. Lyons might be here. But we appreciate them for consistently going above and beyond to feed all of the 600 plus folks in our building. They do a great job. It's quality food, it's timely, and great customer service. So we certainly appreciate all the work that they do. And then Ms. Johnny Skelton is going to come on down. She is our art teacher. Full-time art teacher, so, but she is also our gardening club sponsor. And so she works a lot with our students, and they have been beautifying our campus by planting additional trees and shrubs across the school and teaching our boys and girls how to really care for not only those trees and shrubs, but for the environment in general. So we appreciate Ms. Skelton for all the work that she does. All right, and now to recognize our 4th and 5th grade students who consistently have been attending their meetings and have been beautifying our campus. Alyssa Decker, if you're here, come on down.
Let's have our gardening club come make a front row for us. Come up this way. This way. Let's see if I can make it a second. Yeah. Let's see. Can you step back for me and be my second?
Ms. Gilpin, you may have to get up front.
Come on this way. Come on this way. Here. Oh. Trade with me. Back one right in front. There we go. How's everybody? Doing good? All right, paparazzi, y'all ready? Big smiles, everybody. 1, 2, 3. Keep smiling. Okay.
Stay that way and turn the eyes this way just a second. Big smile. Okay. Thank you.
All right, congratulations, Kevin. All right, also for Katie Sutton, we'll be awarding service awards tonight. And our service awards in Monroe County Schools are awarded to employees with continuous completed service to the system in 5-year increments. These awards are based on the last hire entered into our school system. The Monroe County Board of Education and Administration appreciates the commitment, dedication, and loyalty of the following employees from Katie Sutton Elementary School and later in the program, our Transportation Department. Monroe County Schools recognizes the importance of quality service from quality employees to the overall success of students in our school system. Thanks to each of you for all you do to ensure that the Monroe County school system continues to be one of the top performing school systems in the state. As we call your name, please come up and accept your certificate and pen that's attached to it. We'd ask that you remain up front till all recipients from KB Sutton have been recognized first, and we've taken the photograph. So we'll start with our 5-year awards, and first there will be Stephen Braswell. 5 years as well, Teresa Judd. 5 years of service, Rachel Scott. 10 years of service, Michelle Bell. 10 years of service, Megan Smallwood. 10 years of service, Bobby Brantley. 10 years of service, Sadie Watts. 15 years of service, Tracy Williams. 20 years of service, Angela Lyons. 25 years of service, Julie Spence. Congratulations. And 25 years of service, Sandra Watson. I saw that. Y'all were trying to run me down.
Let me stand here by my twin.
Can y'all, do we need to squeeze in some more?
Keep smiling. 1, 2, 3. All right. Congratulations.
All right, at this time, I'm going to call on Jake Davis to come up and present our transportation staff awards at this time.
Good evening. This evening I'd like to recognize 2 people in our transportation department. The first person I would like to recognize is school bus driver Sarah Hancock. Ms. Hancock goes above and beyond to develop positive and meaningful relationships with her bus riders. She also realizes the importance of academics and, more specifically, the importance of reading. On multiple occasions, Ms. Hancock has worked in coordination with the administrators at Hubbard Elementary School to hold small end-of-day pizza parties for her bus riders who have reached their AR goals for the semester. Ms. Hancock does this for one primary reason: she truly cares for her students. Thank you, Ms. Hancock, for supporting your students and leading them towards success. Okay, the next person I would like to recognize is Mr. Hayden Harris. Mr. Harris joined our team as routing specialist in August of 2018. Since that time, he has invested many hours into planning and conducting meetings during the 2018-2019 school year to help develop and launch our district's new school bus rider registration program. The new program officially launched for the start of the 2019-2020 school year. This new registration process has helped the department maintain more accurate transportation information on students and routes and has ultimately led to improved safety for students and drivers and an increase in efficiency for our bus routes. Mr. Harris continues to work to support and maintain the integrity of the bus rider registration program. So thank you, Mr. Harris, for your dedication to improving our processes in support of our students and community.
All right, for our service awards for transportation, we've got 5 years of service, John Brock. 5 years of service, Sabrina Davis. 5 years of service, Terry McClay. 5 years of service, Elizabeth Roberts. 5 years of service, Agnes Smalls. 5 years of service, Ann Smith. 15 years of service, Patricia Jones. 20 years of service, Derek Johnston. 25 years of service, Tracy Dent. And if I could ask everyone to join me standing real quickly, please, for a big ovation for Miss Alice Walker, 40 years. Let her be the middle.
Yeah, we're good. Congratulations.
Years, how many miles is that?
On the bus?
Yeah.
All right, well, hold on 1 second. I think I missed one on the sheet. Glenda Soki, 5 years. I got old eyes. Congratulations. We'll redo that picture.
All right.
Let's redo it, Wilson. You got Derek's. There's Derek's. Okay.
All right, thank y'all very much. Put this way for me. So, all right, Diane, ready? Hold that. Hold that first. Sure, I got everybody.
Got it. All right, thank you.
Got refreshments out in the hall, gonna take about a 10-minute break.
All right, I think these are made copies for y'all.
We did.
Including some of my little notes down at the bottom, scribbled. For December, we didn't get in as much of the local tax money as we had hoped. I think part of it is the utilities. The utility companies have not paid their taxes yet. They're not due the same time that the homeowners and things like that are due. They're due a little later. So we'll be getting another good-sized bump. You see the little note down there. On January 7th, we did receive $3.6 million. So that was a lot of the property taxes that people had paid that they processed after December. We were able to pay off our TAN on the 23rd. As soon as we got in enough tax money, me, Janet, and Jackson came up here and during the holidays and wrote a check. I took it to the bank to get that thing paid off. So it was paid off, and it's done for this year. Our expenses are pretty much in line for where they need to be this time of the year. A few of them are, you know, a little bit over, but it's percentage-wise, but not large dollar amounts. If you look at the second page, I included the capital projects. Our SPLOST continues to do well. We're bringing in about $400,000 a month, which is a good thing, because we don't typically budget that much, because we try to be conservative with it, because we never know month to month how much we're going to receive from that SPLOST check. And then at the bottom is our federal funds. The majority of that is school food, Title I, and special ed money. So that's the financial report. Does anybody have any questions about it?
What is the normal due date on the utility taxes? It varies, doesn't it?
It does, it
It varies.
depends, the values for utilities are set by the Department of Revenue, and it depends on when the local tax office gets those values and can then generate the bills, and depends on what appeal level there may be on any particular year. So there's no set date for the utilities. They're due 60 days after the bills are issued, but there's no set date for the bills to be issued. So
It's not like normal, you know, personal property tax. There's set dates, not with the utilities.
They have their own schedule.
They operate totally different.
Wish I could have my own schedule. Wish I could have my own schedule.
Any other questions?
Good there.
Okay. Each of you should have received an email copy of the FY18 audit report back in December. If you didn't, just let me know and I can get you a copy. We received an unqualified report, and that is real important. That's the letter at the very front of it that the auditors render an opinion. That's what the bond rating companies look at first. The bond rating companies don't care about the findings. They want to know if our financial statements are materially correct, and ours are. We did receive 2 federal compliance findings, and I emphasize compliance because it was the federal side of it. They require a lot more documentation, crossing the T's, dotting the I's. One of them was with school food equipment. We had a listing, it just wasn't up to what the auditors were looking for, and we could not satisfy them.
since the audit has been completed, I was able to generate a new inventory listing that will satisfy them. So that finding will go away for FY19. The second finding was due to a lack of documentation and various approvals. Basically, in school food, every piece of paper needs to be signed off on by somebody. And then somebody has to review it, and they have to sign off on it. With just two of them, two people in our school food department, it's hard for them to sign off on everything. They get busy and forget. Also, the lack of documentation was due, they moved 3 times during FY19, which is when the auditors were, they were looking at FY18, but school nutrition moved 3 times, so things got misplaced and we weren't able to find them. This finding should not repeat again either, because we now have, since we're back in this building, all of our records are here and they shouldn't be moving around.
What do you mean things got misplaced? What things? Paperwork or?
It's paperwork, vouchers. Basically, a voucher package is invoice, purchase order, copy of the check, things like that, with expenditure.
Okay.
It was not anything done incorrectly or missing. It's just, we wrote some checks and we couldn't give them a copy of the invoice and everything that went with that check because it got lost. Matter of fact, Ms. Singley said she thinks that in one of the moves, it probably flew off off the pickup truck when they were moving from one building to another.
Maybe somewhere we just had.
And it could be somewhere just misfiled, out of order. I spent 2 days in our record room the last couple of days getting it in order, and there's a lot of our boxes were crushed and mutilated because they were in this building during the renovation. So things like that happen. We just try to keep it to a minimum. So I can't guarantee the second one won't repeat, but it shouldn't. So, any questions about the audit report?
On the lunchroom, you said you had 2 people signing off on things. Like, is it signing off on expenditures and things like that?
Well, expenditures and the free and reduced applications for.
Is it, if they're that busy, is it possible to have somebody else that's qualified to sign off on things?
Well, going forward, a lot of this is now in the software that we're now using. So, and some of it was done in the old software, we just couldn't, since we no longer have it, we couldn't show it to them. We couldn't prove that somebody had gone into the system and approved that application. But now that we're on a better system, and we're going to have it for them next year.
Electronic approval.
We'll have electronic approvals on a lot of these applications because they're doing them online.
My thought is if people are that busy, and we're that busy, and you only got 2 people signing off on things, then we need to have other people qualified or make them qualified to sign off on things. So it's fine.
It is. We could always use more people, but sometimes it's just not cost effective.
Yeah. Well, maybe not necessarily more people, but more people qualified to sign off on things is fine. But as long as that's fine. Sounds good.
All right. Any other questions?
And if we have any other questions, y'all can ask the next meeting if you have any other things. If you haven't had time to look through it, we'll be glad to answer. You should have got an email and a copy.
I'm not sure.
I get a copy sent, no one gets a copy sent, and I think they were emailed to every board member. Did y'all get a copy? Okay, we'll send that back out then.
We can.
And we'll give you a hard copy. We can do that too.
We can.
We were told that you would get it.
Email
to you. So
Yeah, I provided them all of your email addresses.
that comes from them, not us.
Yeah, it comes from the Department of Audit.
Well, that's the problem.
I'd rather have paper.
I'd rather have paper.
If that's on my email, it's gonna be on there till
Rather
Jesus
have
comes
paper.
back.
We'll give it to you, hey, we'll give it to you both ways. How about that?
We can do it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Chris.
And next, we have recommendation for legal counsel.
One of the things we have to do in January every year is recommend legal counsel. I think it says in our policy that we have to recommend legal counsel each year and get that approved for our school district. And I am recommending that we continue with the folks that we're using now. We typically, for educational matters, have used Harvard, Hartley, and Hawkins out of Gainesville. We've used them all of my tenure, and basically all the tenure that I've had up here, probably since I've been in personnel too.
Back in, we were using them
It's been a while.
with Harvard.
It's been a while. And so they're very, they know our school district. They deal a lot with educational law. I think, I looked up just to make sure, I think they have, they provide help to 2/3 of the school districts in the state of Georgia. And I can't, whatever that, if they're 180 some odd, that's probably 120 or so districts that they provide advice to. So we know them, Phil Hartley and Corey Kirby, and that gang's done a good job for us and for me. And we kind of, you know, they know a lot about Monroe County. So I'm going to make a recommendation for them to do our educational issues. And then locally, Ben Vaughn has handled, over the past few years, all the local issues. It can be anything from garnishments, residency issues, court orders, things that we have to appear in local court. He's always been there to support those type of things. And so based on those things and his knowledge of what we're doing, a lot of the things that we've done facility-wise, he knows about and has a lot of knowledge and a lot of local knowledge that Ben has because he's from here. So I would recommend that those two entities serve as our legal counsel moving forward for this year.
I'd like to make a motion that we employ Harvard, Hartley, and Hawkins as legal counsel for educational issues and Ben on the local issues, and I want to address that after this is over.
We'll have a discussion on it. Motion by Dr. Dawson, second by Mr. Evans. Okay. Any discussion?
Yeah. Discussion.
Yeah.
We don't have any numbers or what we spent on. I know there's some questions. I've got questions about utilizing the law firm costs. We haven't taken any bids in the past at all. And I think it's, to do our due diligence to the taxpayers is not a bad idea to do so. So, you know, without having those numbers.
We have actually bid out our legal work about, well, it was several years ago. But if I remember correctly from past experience, it's a little hard to bid out that kind of work.
Well, now we'll have an hourly rate and things like that, so I mean, that would be starting there.
Well, we've got a recommendation for the superintendent, and this is the designated time that we hire our attorney for going forward. If there's an issue, maybe it should have been brought up earlier. But, I mean, and also I think you mentioned that they handle 2/3 of the school systems, and they don't do anything but school law. Okay.
That's part of what I wanted to address.
Go ahead.
I think it's wise to have a local attorney and a more of a statewide person with the educational expertise. And that's the point I was gonna make, is I think their practice is totally restricted to education. They are the experts in educational law and practices and policies. So that's why I support using them. They've served us quite well through the years. And I think they'll continue to do so.
I guess my only concern is they're located in Gainesville, so every time they make a visit here, there's at least 5 hours, billable hours, of just traffic time. There's other local firms that offer the same services. I just wonder with our, you know, is it still financially feasible to continue using them? And just wanted to see some invoices just to make sure that we're getting the bang for our buck.
I don't know. I don't know all the systems that you use, I don't have a list of those, but I think that's pretty accurate, that they're serving about 2/3 of the systems in Georgia. So I'm sure many systems are paying far more than we have in travel expense, billable hours. I think you have to look at, I'm not always in favor of taking the low bill of everything. I think you need to look at the quality of the service you're getting. You know, make it, if we're getting the best advice, even if we're paying a little more for it, I think it's well worth the cost, and will do well for Monroe County to continue to have what I consider the best. I think some, evidently the superintendent considers the best.
Well, I can just speak to, I mean, again, the thing about it is that with the school district, it's the superintendent probably and the staff here that works mostly with them. And I have confidence in them because I know that they work with a lot of systems that I have other superintendents that I work with. So we have some commonalities there, and I know that they're on the front end of all the new research that's out there. They're always on top of new policies, things that are passed, legislations that's passed. They have that knowledge that a lot of times local school boards and even administrators don't know. They kind of keep us out ahead of the curve, and when we're talking to them about specific issues, they have that background and knowledge that a lot of people that don't deal with that all the time don't know. And they'll be the first to tell you they don't know. That's why there's some things like, just for Ben, that he doesn't deal with some things in educational law because he doesn't feel comfortable in dealing with it. But yet there's some things that are not dealing with educational law that are better handled here at home. And that's, but I don't think the fact that the logistical distance should speak to their quality. It would, if we felt like they were providing the best service at a decent price, I'm not, we can definitely look into that, but I think for the kids and for the staff and for the school system, you would want the quality service above cost in all aspects, but we'll be glad to provide those. I think that was sent to us to find, and as soon as we can get it, we'll get it. But again, I think as superintendent, I'm going to make that recommendation because I'm confident that they've done the things for our school district that need to be done and protect the school district and protect our kids. And a lot of the things I've said before, a lot of the things that we do through Georgia school boards and a lot of the things that we have connections with, they end up having to represent us anyway on certain issues that go to a certain level. So if you have somebody else that you're dealing with, you're going to end up, if it goes to a certain level, they're going to be representing you anyway. And I'd rather just eliminate a middleman. If I've got to call them on certain things that are going to go through Georgia school boards, I just soon deal with the folks that are under their liability umbrella. That to me, that's really the main reason, because if you've got somebody adjunct to that, you're going to be paying for their service, and then when something actually comes down and you've got to make a decision, it's going to go through Harvard and Hartley anyway. So, yeah, so that's one of the reasons, because you're going to be paying, you're going to have to pay probably 2 bills there anyway if it's certain issues that go to that, especially with liability issues that we deal with, for personnel issues that may come up that get challenged and things like that. But I think I'm going to make the recommendation because I feel comfortable. I feel like they're doing a good job for the district. I haven't dealt with any of the others, so I can't really speak to them. So a part of me is I'm not qualified to speak to that, but I can speak to what our relationship is with these entities that I'm recommending.
I would like to vote on them separately because I kind of like Harvard, Hartley, and Hawkins, but I do think if our board members want us to, get some other quotes from other people, I think we should do that. But I don't like voting on them together because I'm not necessarily for the second.
Well, we have a motion. We have a second.
Well, y'all brought up a motion before we could discuss.
That's what you have to do. You have to make the motion so you can discuss.
Then we'll make another one.
Let's go ahead and carry the vote. Tim?
Call to the vote. I'll I'll just say, I'll go back, you're the only one, you said that this is the only law firm out.
Other than me, yeah.
Other than that dealt with, do a little research, go back to, 1999.
I've dealt with.
Davis versus Monroe County Board of Education, Supreme Court case that went all the way to the top. I don't know for sure, but I just don't think we'd have gone, we'd have had the same outcome if we were dealing with, the school, the people that were as proficient in school law as is Harlan and Harlan. That's my view. All right? Okay, got a motion, got a second? Any more discussion?
If it's on the same one, you get late, still second.
Okay, we're all in favor of the motion to hire the two firms as the motion stated, signify by raising your hand. All opposed? Two opposed, all abstaining?
Just don't have enough information, I haven't seen the invoices.
Well, we just can't provide it tonight.
We could have delayed the vote as well.
Exactly, I agree with
I think
that.
we're required, we can
We
come back and
asked before the
revisit this at a
meeting.
later time if you like. Okay.
It should have been.
All right? It passes 4-2-1.
Okay. All right, readers to leaders update.
I wanted to provide an update on the Leaders to Leaders program. As you know, one of our areas of focus is to increase our literacy and numeracy rates. And we began a very special program in our district back in September. And I wanted to let you know we've had 3 trainings since September. We had September the 30th where we trained 20 individuals. November the 4th we trained 12. And then January the 10th we trained only 4 people. So we've trained a total of 36 volunteers, which has definitely made an impact, we think, in our school system so far in the area of literacy. We've impacted, if we, whenever we place those staff, those volunteers in the classrooms, we have covered 39 classrooms in T.G. Scott, K.B. Sutton, and Howard Elementary in grades pre-K through 2nd grade. We're still working to fill up some of the classrooms in 2nd grade across those 3 schools. A few of our parents work in multiple classrooms, like Ms. Bilderback, so she's helping in a kindergarten class and in a 2nd grade class. Ms. Pettigrew, she's working too. So we just appreciate the support of our board members and being able to volunteer and read to our children. The next opportunity for Readers to Leaders will be March the 6th at 9 a.m. If any of you are able to come and want to be a part and be trained, we would love to have you. The training will be here in the boardroom. It takes about an hour. More opportunities to come. Our Boys and Girls Club, their staff members are going to be trained. They want to also be in the classrooms and help our students during the school day and be able to carry that support over into the Boys and Girls Club in the afternoons. And also we have some Mary Parsons High School students who also want to volunteer and help read to students. So that has extended to peers. So we're very excited about that opportunity. And those students will be able to come to our March 6th training. So basically we've impacted around 860 students by having an additional person in the classroom and helped during literacy times. So it's just been very effective. We've heard some positive results, and we're going to hopefully get a few more people trained, and then we'll be able to learn from this year and increase it even more next school year. So another goal that we have also is to increase the number of volunteers. So this has really helped bring more people and more adults into the classroom to help students read and feel comfortable and confident with their reading skills.
More community involvement.
Absolutely. It's been very positive. It's been very positive.
All right, we want to go into professional learning.
Sure. So did everyone get a copy of the board training agenda? So we are looking forward to January the 29th, beginning at 8:30. We will have our board work session. And Some of the topics that we will actually be covering that day will be code of ethics for board members, conflict of interest and nepotism policy. We're going to review those as we have to do that annually. Dr. Julie Alligood from Middle Georgia RESA will be here to do that presentation. Did you find it, Mr. Adams? And then we're also going to spend some time looking at policy development. I think that was one of the topics that someone was interested in. So Dr. Janet Greer from Middle Georgia RESA will be doing that presentation. Then after lunch, Steve Smith, who is the superintendent in Leckley County, will be here to talk about state funding and financial training. And then we will do our annual GSBA self-assessment. And then we'll talk about our multi-tier system of supports and positive behavior interventions and support. So we'll dig a little deeper into the MTSS acronym and PBIS with these rules. So we'll have a full day together, and it's during the weekday. So we accommodated everyone. Save your Saturday.
That's right.
You can enjoy your sleep in on Saturday.
And you're providing lunch, that's good.
And we're going to have lunch, of course. We're going to feed you well.
Any questions on that? We just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of that, so you can clear up that day. And we requested some information as it related to Harvard and Hartley. We're trying to have that available on that day to show y'all. As soon as we can get to some stuff that put our hands, a lot of this is in digital files, and right now we can't get some digital files.
That's fine.
All right, and we have the need for executive session. Up there you have,
That should be that, that's not, that is a mistake.
That's not correct.
That's from an older one. Tonight, we to go in executive session for personnel and safety.
Okay. Hear a motion that we go into executive session for personnel and safety. Yes, Ms. Pettigrew makes a motion, a second by, thank you, Mr. Pittman, second by Mr. Pittman. All in favor, signify by raising your hand. That is unanimous.
Is that a qualifier?
Yeah.